Greg, wake up. It happened. Dataslate Day. The nerfs, the buffs, the glorious shifts in power. Can you feel it? Our teams are clamoring to test out their new toys. Exquisite. Also, we have to tell people to like and subscribe and remind them there is a community Discord they can join linked in the description below. You know, that whole thing. Get up. We have some rules to go over. Season 3 has only just begun. 2 teams released and 4 more revealed since Adepticon. Anyone else eyeballing the Edgelord Space Dwarves? Those will have to be for the future. For now, Dataslate Day, and oh, this is a juicy one. Let's get right into it with new core rules. First up, jump tests are always passed. I can't imagine too many people have come across this mechanic until recently, so in case you didn't know, when an operative moves from one vantage to another with a gap between them, a dice is normally rolled to see if the movement succeeds. It's a 2+, so not super bad, but this level of RNG in the strategy-heavy confines of Kill Team is why most players avoided using ledge-to-ledge jumping. It would be absolute misery if a loss could be chalked up to a roll of a 1 for movement. Not even damage dealing or saving, just moving. Even outside of Beta Decima, this is a welcome addition, and hopefully boards may become more varied in their vertical natures. That being said, with Beta Decima specifically in mind, there are 2 sweeping changes for that arena. Number 1, the obscuring rule provided by the hazardous zone. You know the one, we've talked about it a few times. How it gives advantages to teams like the Phobos, Kasserkin, Wyrmblade, Hearthkyn, and pretty much any ranged unit that can see through obscuring. This was a pretty big strike against this terrain for me. Now, the hazardous zone is treated as an area that simply causes units to not be visible to each other. Considering the balance of the map, I actually like this. It was a big sticking point for myself and others as to why this map type shouldn't be used in any competitive capacity. The other issue was with more mobile teams. Some of that is handled with change number 2. If your team has a way of forward deploying units outside of your drop zone, this deployment is limited to 4 inches from the drop zone edge. This appears to be for units that can do this before or during the firefight phase, as Kommandos and Hierotek are used as an example, reining in even more advantages some teams have among these catwalks. These 3 core rules changes all seem focused on the Beta Decima problems, and so far Games Workshop does seem to be making the needed adjustments. This all brings the Season 3 arena closer into a halfway spot between open boards and close quarters. Certainly teams with mobility options will still have an easier time than most, but there has been some adjustments in that sector as well. More on that in a minute. Before that, we'll start with the Season 1 shifts. The Kommandos and the Vet Guard both saw some nerfs. It seemed about time to make these adjustments. Despite being the first of the bespoke teams, power creep never managed to keep them down, as they would make up a good portion of the top teams at many events. The Kommandos, who I believe took first at LVO, has had 3 adjustments. The Bomb Squig can now suffer from stun, but can gain no APL positives. It has also had its special shooting attack range reduced from 2 inches to engagement range, a drastic potential damage reduction to this wildly destructive unit. The Choppa equipment has had its attack profile reduced by 1. This brings it down to 3. They do note that the regular boy is unaffected by this change. It's a little sad. When I think orcs, I think crumping. And even though I like the Kommandos, I feel like Kill Team is in dire need of a melee-focused greenskin squad. Maybe one day, after the Tyranid bespoke team, of course. Lastly, Just a Scratch can no longer target the Bomb Squig, a unit that just can't catch a break. As well, it only works against normal hits from shooting or melee. No more taking a plasma crit to the face and shrugging it off. There has been a lot of damage mitigation limiting going on across all the teams for many data slates now, so this feels like a nerf that was lined up for a while. The Vet Guard, who actually I believe took second at LVO, have finally had some changes. No longer dodging the nerf bat, the spotter's ability to treat an enemy operative as being in engage was limited a little with the addition of the adjustment that this will only work against enemies who aren't in cover provided by heavy terrain. A little bit of a counterplay added to a strong ability. It also brings it in line with many other teams that do have a similar ability. The Demolition Vet had a sizable nerf. I've heard stories of this unit placing its charge on a ceiling and destroying the units on the other side. Now, if that floor is considered heavy terrain, that mine will no longer harm units on the other side. The basic rule of thumb is a line must be drawn from the center of the token to any point on an operative's base, but if that line is prevented fully by heavy terrain, the operative is not a valid target. Also, the range of the damage area was reduced by an inch, further limiting the lethality of this mine. And an even further limit to this unit's power, it can now only plant one mine per game, bringing it in line with many other mine-laying units. Mostly reductions in damage output for the Vet Guard. They should still perform well with their numbers, however, just not as fun with the limited destruction. The next big change has implication across the open and beta decima arenas. The Void Dancer troop finally had its wings clipped. They have lost their fly keyword. Do you hear that? It's the cry of joy from every team that has ever had to face this highly abusable tactic. But even with this loss, they are still very mobile. They are treated as having fly when considering enemy and ally bases, so they will still be able to pass within engagement range of enemies as they move about the board. But when it comes to climbing and dropping, the unit treats any and all distances up or down as 2 inches off its total movement. Still better than most, and to some degree still abusable, but this should cut down on some of the absolute insanity this team of tricksters would be able to take part in. The Wyrmblade saw a fix to a prior buff. In our last Dataslate video, I accidentally claimed the original buff worked in the way it does now, so sort of a retroactive fix for my old video. Thanks, G-dubs. The wording on the original Cult Ambush buff required all enemy operatives to see the activated Wyrmblade unit to prevent the reroll function. This would be hell in close quarters. Now it is as the community assumed this was supposed to be written. If any enemy operative sees the Wyrmblade, it prevents the ambush unless that unit changed from conceal to engage on that activation. The more reasonable approach. Lastly, for Season 1, the Warpcoven. My favorite Dusty Boys have been receiving more and more love every Dataslate to try and make this team of trickery and durability more competitive. The Exalted Astartes strategic ploy was enhanced in a prior Dataslate, but was further buffed by dropping its command point cost completely, as this ploy is integral to the team's function, taking its place alongside adjustments like the Phobos Vanguard ploy. Remember that there are teams that can shut down ploy use altogether, so there is still some counterplay to the cost reduction. Sorcerer's Command also saw an increase in range from 6 to 9 inches, which should really help with managing distances to and from sorcerers. The Zangors gained some love with an increase in their wounds by 1, up to 9. It makes them more useful in the close range that they want to be in, and makes the prospect of an all-Zangor team seem a little more horrifying. The Psychic powers gained the Hierotek treatment as well. Any ability that lasts until the end of the turn will now last until the operative that cast it goes again, dies, or if the power is used again. I love this. The rule-bending powers some teams have are being unshackled, making them feel more oppressive to their opponents. This buff, I believe, leads to the nerf of ephemeral instability, reducing movement by 1 instead of 2 on charge and dash. This is reasonable and is certainly a good trade-off when you consider that abilities like Twist Destiny, Weave Fate, or Infernal Fire all will last much longer, giving them more purpose. Weirdly, Arcane Robes saw a buff. Instead of changing a critical hit to a normal hit once per battle, this function can now occur once per turning point. A pretty sizable buff for a decent defensive option. Season 2 also saw many adjustments. The Farstalker Kinband, after all its buffs, has received further changes. This first one reads a little weird. It claims the Killbroker's Ritual Blade and Blade get one more attack. I believe this is just claiming that the Killbroker's melee profiles should be at 4 for whichever weapon they have, but the rest of the team will still be at their normal values. The Stalker unit also received a boon to its melee profile with +1 attack. The Hounds lost its GA2 status, which I view as a bit of a nerf, but this general balance between Horde and Elite teams comes from Overwatch potential, so this could be related to that. The Tracker unit gained a bit of a buff, allowing it to play closer to the enemy without losing its abilities. Not bad overall. Hopefully, with the Kroot hype going on right now, this team might get a little more representation. The Hierotek have been going through a similar spat of buffs to bring them up to par, and it seems these haven't come to an end. Reanimation Protocols now goes off on a 2+ instead of a 3. This makes setting up a Hail Mary resurrection play a little more viable. The Chronomancer's Nanomine received a very expected nerf. The area of effect has been halved down to 3 inches from the token center, and the distance reduction now has a minimum movement of 4 inches, meaning dash will go unaffected by this action. The Technomancer's Rites of Reanimation was changed to be close to the Plasmacyte's ability. This is now a constantly in play action that triggers when a nearby ally dies. The Technomancer will suffer a 1 APL drop for its next activation from using this ability, like what the Plasmacyte used to experience. As this is now an ability, it also means the Apprentech will not be able to access it. The Psychomancer's Conjure Trauma ability gained a function on top of the super injury state. A dice is rolled, and if the result is higher than the target's APL, that unit loses an APL. This should only last until after the target goes, like how stun works. At least that's how I read it. The Apprentech was a unit that fell behind the other leaders on the team, but now is its time to shine with its brand new 3 APL characteristic. This will open the team up to many more options and functions, as the Apprentech will be able to spread Cryptech abilities and still provide damage or mobility. The Hearthkyn Salvagers gained further buffs to aid them in the grudges against their enemies. In particular, the Dozer's Nux Smash ability also allows the unit to charge up to 3 inches for free, even if the unit had already charged. This is a weird one, as they don't say when this happens. Simply that this line of information is added. So what do you all think? Can you move and then charge and perform the Nux damage? Do you charge, perform the Nux damage, and then charge again? This would of course allow you to re-engage the target or pick another target. All of the above? I know which one I'm hoping for. It's all of them. I'm hoping for all of them. The Locator has gained 2 buffs. Both are massive. Its early detection ability limited enemy pregame movement before, but now it also prevents any movement until the firefight phase. Many teams will suffer from this, but all teams will also suffer in the scouting phase with recon, as you will not be able to move using it. This would allow the Hearthkyn to pick Fortify easily without much fear of losing initiative, unless their opponent is okay with gaining no real ability on top of a first activation advantage. The Locator's Pan-Spectral Scan also confers anti-obscuring to enemies within the token range targeted by ally Hearthkyn. This would have been insane without the Beta Decima change. Instead, it is simply a very powerful tool on a very powerful specialist. The Fellgor got some nerfs this time around. The Ironhorn's Call the Attack ability is now limited to 6 inches, whereas before it was just a visibility check. This will change how the team has to move around the field and limit some options for mobility, which is a bit sad. The Gnarlscar's Uncompromising Attack had a bit of a clarification. The shooting attack it makes can only be from its auto pistol. No more engagement range grenade throwing. Sadly, Warpaint had its points cost increased. I recently went over the Fellgor in a video and talked about how, for the most part, Warpaint was one of the better item options. This will make you have to pick and choose a little more when putting your plan together. Lastly, the Death Knell's Wargong ability no longer works if the Death Knell is in a frenzy state. The Fellgor do alright in tournament play, but based on the recent history of nerfs and buffs and adjustments and taking back nerfs and all of this, it still feels like the team is in a tumultuous position in Kill Team. Never too sure what is going to happen next with them. From the Ashes of Faith mid-season release, the Cultists take yet another hit. Their Mutant's Winged Gift has lost its first bullet point. This relates to the unit not taking any reductions to their movement. As a cultist player that saw the merit in abusing the hell out of this, I agree. It was deceptively strong for this in-your-face team, and the big nerf that I feel we all knew was coming. The team is now down to 9 devotees from 10. Looking at both of these adjustments with everything done so far, honestly, it may still not be enough. Seriously, the mutation being a heal instead of a full reset opened up the avenue for using Exaltation and Pain more. The loss of the devotee is offset by the fact that one devotee is usually mutated early, meaning if you time it, there should be one less activation in turn 1. These are certainly nerfs, don't get me wrong, but it's weird thinking these nerfs open up more avenues for better things that might not have been used before. Such an odd team. And all of that is the Q1 2024 Dataslate. In my opinion, this one is a bit crazier than many of the prior Dataslates. Huge game-changing shifts. Harlequin's Lost Fly. What even is that? That was their whole thing. And the redefining of Beta Decima, I might just need to pick it up now. We'll see. I do think some teams will still have a lot of power in there, but the same could be said for close quarters matches, and maybe that would be a good thing. Time will tell. I'll have to keep an eye on tournaments going forward, but what do you think? Anything really stand out to you among these changes? Something you're excited about? Maybe you're mad that a mechanic you loved to abuse got taken away. Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget, you can continue the conversation over on our community Discord linked in the description. As always, likes for the like god and subscribes for the subscribe throne. I am Kimmerix, and I'll see you in the next one.